There has been a pause in hostilities today by the major parties, a week out from election day. But from tomorrow, it will be back on for young and old, I presume. The election, if you believe the polls, is done and dusted, with Labor staring at a second term, avoiding the embarrassment of being the first government to serve just one term since way back in the 1930s. Elections in Australia, though, they have a way of tossing up results that no one expects. Now, you don't have to go back very far. Bill Shorten was supposed to be a red-hot favourite in 2019. He went into that election needing to win just 7 seats. Scott Morrison had been painted as having a problem with women, which he clearly did not. Come election day, it turns out the coalition won 3 seats, Labor lost 1, and that gave Morrison 77 and victory. And Bill Shorten lost the leadership, and that's now why we have Anthony Albanese. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that that will happen this time. The coalition campaign has been, at best, in my view, shambolic, at worst, just a train wreck. However, what the polls don't pick up, I don't think, is the level of despair over cost of living in the outer suburbs of Australia. Complicating the path to a win for the opposition, though, is the drift by voters to independent candidates and the inability of anyone to argue for truth in advertising during election campaigns. This drives me mad. How is it that you can get fined and publicly shamed if you advertise a product, any product, anything from an airfare to a furniture sale, and you say, make claims that are not true, and you can, in a bid to get elected, just make up stuff. Make it up. The biggest misrepresentation is probably the well-drilled Labor candidates, everyone from the Prime Minister down, saying, well, Peter Dutton's nuclear plan is going to cost $600 billion. Now, that's a figure plucked from analysis by a Labor-friendly outfit called the Smart Energy Council. Even they say the cost would be somewhere between $116 billion and $600 billion. So what do Labor and the Prime Minister do? They just take the higher figure, say it over and over again. It's dirty, but it's smart politics. Technically absurd, but voters hear the number and they say, well, that's a lot of money. Let's stick with the sun and wind power. We can't spend $600 billion. What the opposition has failed to do, I think, is prosecute an argument that Labor's renewable-only plan would also be eye-bleedingly expensive and unreliable. They haven't put a figure on that. Yet you also have to, as the opposition, why have they hidden people? You've got to ask Peter Dutton this. Why have they hidden people like Ted O'Brien? I think he prosecutes this case very well. And on the wider question of popular figures, why has Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price been so invisible up until last week? Now, on advertising, we have again seen Clive Palmer spraying money around like confetti in newspapers and on free-to-air TV, making wild claims like Labor and the coalition policies are 99% the same. Well, clearly they are not. But why not just make stuff up like everyone else does? The independents especially, some of the teals, are just as bad. Now, I have an independent teal standing in my seat, for example. His name is Ben Smith. Now, he might be a nice bloke and he's well-meaning, I presume. I don't actually know. But what I do know is he is extremely well funded for someone whose job is running a local community support centre. The electorate is plastered with Ben Smith posters. My letterbox is stuffed with Ben Smith flyers. His face is everywhere. That's okay, it's called democracy. But Ben is funded by Climate 200, by his own admission, by Simon Holmes à Court. So much for being independent. And some of the claims this bloke makes on those flyers, really seriously, are having a lend of people. He says, for example, he can, quote, secure our fair share of federal funding. Well, Ben, that's not how it works. If Labor wins in their own right and you win Flinders, you have no seat at the table and no voice about any funding at all. He also says if he beats Zoe McKenzie, the Liberal sitting member, who is I think, future Cabinet Minister, he will hold Woolworths and Coles accountable for lower prices. Well, Ben, you can't actually do anything to the supermarkets except put words on a flyer. And he says he will also get $85 million for the local hospital. Again, no, he can't. Now, you'd hope most people are smart enough to ignore these crazy, wild claims and that most people can see the Teals in other seats have done virtually nothing for their communities since being elected. But this, sadly, is where we are headed, to a parliament with a crowded crossbench of people warming seats.